Welcome to episode number 21 of the Marine Layer podcast with TJ Mathewson and Lyle Goldstein. On today's pod, a bonus episode. It's our season predictions episode. We have some Vegas odds. We have some FanGraphs projections for the Mariners for 2023. We'll take a look at those, see if anything sticks out, overs, unders, however else you want to look at the 2023 season. We'll give our predictions for how we think it will roll out. That's all we got. So let's get it rolling. And we welcome you into this episode of the Marine Layer podcast on Wednesday, March 22nd. When this episode comes out on Friday, the 24th, the regular season opener will be less than a week away, which also means emotion-free takes and analysis on this podcast will also be 100% gone. Be prepared.
You see, we've been sitting here all calm and stoic all off season, breaking things down from an analytical standpoint. When this season gets going, there'll still be some of that, but you'll probably see more emotion from us be poured into this pod on a weekly basis. I mean, for our listeners, you should see some of the texts that TJ and I will send back and forth to each other over the course of a season. I'm trying to think, we've almost started our own two-person code and language over text during these Mariners games. And nothing more I can think of than either when there's an injury or somebody gives up a nuke of a home run, and one of us will just send about 10 periods, ... in a text to each other. And we both know what it means.
It's Morse code.
Exactly. It's
what if you had to think, what would an episode have sounded like on, let's say, like June 17th, 2022? I mean, I probably would have cussed a lot. Right around. I think the Mariners were trending towards, I think that was right before they lost 4 or 5 at home to the Angels and fell 20 or is it and fell, I forget how far under 500. 10. They had their worst record of the season on June 20th last year before, going on the 22 of 25 and putting that all behind them. But I just prepare yourselves. I remember April especially, right? I think April is a time for a lot of hot takes, to say the least. There were some. I can very remember specifically one week thinking the Mariners offense last year was going to be a top 5 unit in baseball, to then the next 2 weeks after that in April where they couldn't score a run. It depends. Let's just say things might get off the rails. They might. But hey, fans' perspective. That's what we bring.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. Yeah, if we'd been talking last June, we'd be talking about how the season was destroyed. So thank God we started it in the off season.
I know, little more stoic. The only thing that really gets us riled up is spending. But I think that's the case for everyone. Let's look at these numbers, Lyle, for our preseason predictions. I want to start right off the top with the one that everyone is most concerned with. DraftKings has the Mariners over/under win total at 87.5. A little bit higher than their number from last year, which I do not remember off the top of my head. But 87.5 after 2 consecutive 90-win seasons is what DraftKings sets the Mariners number at. I know what I would pick for this number, but Lyle, what would you say looking ahead to this 2023 season?
Okay, so we're going right to the projected win total. I would have to think this is over, right? I mean, the last 2 years, they've won 90 games. The 2021 roster was not as good as the 2022 roster. And I would say the 2022 roster is almost certainly not as good as the 2023 roster. So, look, you can't project injuries. We don't know if the starters will stay healthy all year. But just looking at the team on paper, it feels like they should absolutely be over 87.5 wins.
I'm with you on this. I think it's a pretty easy over. Even if they're not quite as healthy, the roster's better, right? The Mariners got to 90 wins last year, not only because their roster is better than 21, but because they had the best health of any starting rotation in baseball, which will not repeat itself this year. There will be a Mariners starter that misses a start with an injury. No odds on that. I would have hammered that if that was an option, but DraftKings does not make that an option. Regardless, though, the Mariners, even with the balanced schedule, they are going to win over 87.5 games. I would be very floored if they're not they don't win 87.5 games this year. So I guess that's a quick, easy thought. I mean, if you want to hear our thoughts on why that, I mean, just go listen to literally every other episode we've done. So I think we do a pretty good job of breaking it down. And this is just our predictions here. So another thing to that, Lyle, I mean, adding on, they're minus 150 to make the playoffs. That means betting 150 to win 100 to make the playoffs, which is a favorable number, which means DraftKings thinks, yes, the Mariners will be making the playoffs again this year. I agree. And you could probably say in 2 seconds that, yes, you agree too.
I would agree. There's going to be 6 playoff spots. You would have to think the Mariners can grab one of them, whether it's the division or not. We'll get to that in a minute. But they should absolutely be one of the 6 best teams in the American League.
Oh, glad DraftKings agrees with us. Winning the division plus 320. They are second behind Houston, who's minus 175 to win the American League West. Bit of a tall task.
Yeah, this one is where it gets not even tricky, but just a little more uphill. My money's on no. Look, Houston lost Verlander. They still added Jose Abreu. They're still going to be a really, really good team. Probably the best team in baseball. You never know, but if I had to put my money somewhere, it would be on the Astros to win the division.
16 games is a lot to make up. Jerry DiPoto, if we had him on here, would say, well, you know, it was 16 games, but you look at this here and you look at this there and you look at all this and these factors, and it really wasn't like 16 games. But in reality, the Mariners, even with luck factor and health factor for both teams, will probably not gain 16 games on the Astros. That's a pretty tall task asking them. And it's a pretty big gap between plus 320 and minus 175. So DraftKings and all the people in Vegas who build those nice big hotels, make a lot of money, understand that the Astros are probably with about 95% certainty winning the American League West this year. I would be really floored if anybody besides Houston wins the American League West. I don't know if people think that's a hot take. It's not a hot take. So I'm not meaning it to be a hot take. That is what will probably happen. A couple other more long shots, Lyle, that we could really just dream of. Plus 900 to win the American League. Plus 1900 to win the World Series. It's steep, right? I don't think either of us are gonna say in this episode the Mariners are winning the World Series this year, because I think we're a little more resolved than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it, but it seems like some tall odds. I mean, just counting the odds here, there's what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. They'd be like tied for 10th in odds to win the World Series. So it's not impossible, and you never know what can happen in October. But again, if you're just going off early season projections and where you want to kind of spend your money toward, feels like a tall task.
And you can always cook up a scenario where it's like, well, if the Mariners did this and matched up with this and pitched this guy and ran their bullpen like this and the lineup hit like this, and well, yeah, you could probably cook your way into the World Series. But as we see the team right now, have not seen them play, this 2023 team play in real live games together that matter. Spring training does not count. Real live games that matter. I don't think we can make that assumption here on this episode of the podcast. So I guess to wrap all this, win stuff up, Lyle, what is your projection of what the Mariners do this year win-wise and where they would end up?
People can hold me to this because, again, it's probably going to be wrong. I wouldn't say my early season projections are usually really good. Last year, I thought the Yankees might miss the playoffs, and they did not. I'm going to say they'll win 93 games, finish second in the AL West, and lose either in the ALDS again or the ALCS.
I'll go a little bit below you. I'm going to say 91 and 71. Probably grab the first wild card, host a wild card series, losing the division series again, probably to Houston. So
let me just say this. Do I think there's a real world this year where the Mariners could be the second best team in the American League? Yeah, I do, behind the Astros. I mean, the Yankees are already pretty banged up. The Blue Jays, are good, but the Mariners beat them last year. I think there's a world the Mariners can be the second best team in the AL. But again, everything runs through Houston. That's going to make or break it.
And if you can't beat Houston, especially down the stretch of the season, we saw in the second half of the season, I mean, you put the two teams on the same fields, and Houston won 9 of 10, right, from All-Star break on against the M's. Is that the right number?
I think so. I mean, that sounds about right. And then obviously went 3-0 in the divisional series. I mean, they are a tough out.
That was including the divisional series.
Oh, then yeah, that does sound right. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, you see it when you watch these games live. Like I always say it, playing against the Astros, trying to beat them in one game legitimately feels like climbing Mount Everest. Like every single out you have to earn to get feels like the hardest out you've ever worked for. That's how good they are.
So 93 wins for you, 91 for me. I think that's where we're set at, which I think is a pretty reasonable expectation. Again, I think the Mariners roster is better, which could shoot them over the 90 wins they had the last 2 years, but in a little bit of injury regression could bring them back a little bit. And you might see some starts from a guy who's not scheduled to start. Again, the Mariners did not have a single starter who was scheduled to start miss a single start last year. That is almost unheard of, and that's gonna change. And that's one of the biggest factors in terms of win of a win total swinging for a team as the season goes.
Yeah, and the good news is they do have some more depth this year between Flexen, side note, don't trade him, Bryce Miller, a couple other minor leaguers, so that'll be good. But yeah, those guys may be relied upon. Okay, moving on here over to some of the player projections. These are kind of fun, and I've got one that I'm really kind of eyeing at here. They have Julio at 30.5 home runs here in 2023. Where are you feeling on that regard?
That's tough. I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna go under. That's.
Are you really?
That is a tall task. Yeah, I'll. You can mark me down as under. Yeah, I don't know. Call me a hater, but I feel like he just might get pitched. People are gonna start respecting enough to pitch around him, I think. So this is not me hating on Julio. He's projected for 5.5 wins this year, which is incredible. But 30, it's a lot. It's a lot of homers. Maybe if Manfred deadens the baseball more this year, like his little gremlins behind the scenes, like do everything possible to make it impossible to hit home runs. If he hits 29, like I'll be right, and I'd still say, man, that's a really good season.
How he gets pitched is a fair take to have on this. So yeah, I mean, he may get way, way more respect and guys may pitch around him more. So that's something to take into account. And yeah, nobody can predict what Rob Manfred's going to do behind the scenes. I mean, good luck. I guess my theory on it, and the reason I'm going to go over here, is Julio played 132 games last year. He hit 28 balls over the fence. I feel like if he plays 150 to 155 and stays healthy this year, feel like another 2 are in the cards, especially considering he basically didn't hit a home run until the month of May. I like, if it's up to me, I'm going over.
Okay, that's a fair assumption. I do have an over under total I like a little bit better than Julio's home run total, which seems about where he will be this year, like within the margin of error. Do you know one that I think is kind of absurd, given he stays healthy? Robbie Ray's strikeout total is 205.5. Take your mortgage and put it on that, and you're done. You're good. You're in the clear.
And you're going over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is what Robbie Ray does best. He strikes guys out, and especially with this new splitter, you'd have to think some more are going to accrue for him. So I'm with you. I'm going over on Robbie Ray strikeouts as long as he's healthy.
I just don't see a world where Robbie Ray pitches 170 innings and doesn't strike out over 206 batters. That does not compute how he wouldn't do that. I mean, last year had an off year and struck out more guys than that. I mean, you're just asking for him to go out there every 5th day and start, 28 games. I mean, even in his bad years, Robbie Ray, if I can, find his season by season strikeouts, which FanGraphs loves to throw their numbers all over the place. I mean, look at this. An off year last year. I got it. I mean, 212, 248, 235, 218, 218 in seasons he has pitched a full healthy season and has started at least 28 games. He's eclipsed that mark every time. I'm banking Robbie Ray to start 28 games for the Mariners this year, so I'm also banking on him to go over. And oh, by the way, he's been His velocity's been up in spring training too, which bodes very well for his fastball and getting strikeouts.
Yeah, let's remember this guy entering 2022 had the highest K per nine in the history of baseball. I mean, even now it's come down a little bit and he doesn't hold it anymore, but this guy's averaged 11 strikeouts per nine over his career. He should absolutely hit 206 or more if he's healthy. Okay, another total I like on here, Luis Castillo's strikeout odds. They've got him at 190.5 for 2023. This probably feels around the ballpark he's in, but where do you lean on this one?
This one is really tough. Given he's healthy, I'm going to probably go over, but this is actually within the margin of error, unlike Robbie Ray. I don't think Robbie Ray's really within the margin of error. I think this is right smack on for Luis, because Luis has the strikeout stuff, but doesn't necessarily always get the strikeouts as the course of a game goes along. So I'll lean over because I'm high on Luis's stuff, but I'm not putting my mortgage on this one.
That's probably where I stand. I'm going to go the slide over. Just what he's done with his fastball over the last year, which we've talked about so much over the last few weeks. I just don't get it. I don't get how it's improved that much, but it has. It's right on paper, right in front of you. It has. And if that sustains into 2023 and his changeup gets any better than it did last year, because usually that's his best pitch. So if that returns to form a little bit, I feel like he should go over as long as he's healthy.
Probably, because then you're saying two plus strikeout pitches. Usually leans over 200 strikeouts, and even pitching 170 innings, that's a slightly above average strikeout rate nowadays for that. So that works out.
That's probably right. Okay,
here's some more things. Go ahead. Oh, you were going to segue. We were segueing to the same thing. Another thing that might be worth a full-time investment. I don't think this would be it for me, judging what I said about his home run total. But MVP odds, Julio is plus 700 for MVP this year. Lyle, what do you think about that?
Just for people's perspective, look at how Vegas and just third parties are viewing him all of a sudden. Here are the guys that have better MVP odds than Julio, who's 22 years old, entering 2023. Aaron Judge, the reigning winner. Shohei Ohtani, the best player in the world. And last but not least, Mike Trout, maybe the best player of this generation. Those are the three guys that are above Julio. I don't think he wins it in 2022, but if you wanted to take somebody that wasn't the main three, I mean, plus 700 are decent odds. So honestly, I wish Julio was a little bit lower. If he was like 7th or 8th, that might be worth a bet.
Yeah, that would be a little bit better value per se. The only problem is he's not beating a healthy Shohei in an MVP race. Even if the Mariners win like 98 games and Julio hits 45 home runs, if Shohei plays full time as a pitcher and a hitter again this year before he hits free agency, he's winning it. Like, it doesn't matter if the Angels win 79 games again, he's winning MVP, which doesn't lead me to put real cash down on Julio's future MVP value. But it is a thought, and it would make me feel a lot better about Julio's chances of winning an MVP if Shohei left the American League.
Here's how I look at AL MVP voting, or just Shohei Ohtani MVP voting for the rest of his prime going forward. And tell me if I'm off on this, but this is basically how I view it. Every single year, Ohtani's basically got the MVP in his hands unless somebody does something ridiculous enough to snatch it away from him, like Aaron Judge hitting 62 home runs and breaking records. Other than that, I think it's Ohtani's just about every year.
Or voter fatigue. I mean, we see it in the NBA all the time with voter fatigue, but we don't know quite to the level of voter fatigue that baseball writers have. We haven't had an example like a LeBron James to have voter fatigue on in Major League Baseball. It's really kind of bounced around, and when Mike Trout has been healthy for a full season, it's usually been him. So that would be the closest example, but that's something we'll have to see as we go down the line.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, Cy Young odds here. AL Cy Young odds. Here are where the Mariners stand. Robbie Ray actually has the best odds of any of the five in the rotation at plus 1,600. Luis Castillo is plus 1,700. Logan Gilbert's plus 1,800. George Kirby's plus 5,000. I've got one on this list that jumps off the page to me, but I'll throw it to you first.
Well, I know what yours is, so I'll just say it. I'll say it, and you can add on behind me. George Kirby at plus 5,000, I think is pretty absurd. I think it's just because they're low on his innings, to be honest. If you go look at FanGraphs, they have George Kirby projected for in the ballpark of 130 innings this year, which does not win you the Cy Young. However, if George Kirby pitches 180 innings, pitches 50 more innings than that, that plus 5,000 value is incredible for George Kirby because he's probably have a better chance to win Cy Young than at very least Logan Gilbert in front of him. Nothing against Logan at plus 1,800, but Kirby at plus 5,000 to Gilbert at plus 1,800 is kind of silly, to be honest. You compare the two and their repertoires. So at the very least, Kirby's in front of that. Otherwise, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to actually be confident in Robbie Ray or Luis Castillo to win the Cy Young. I mean, the way I look at it, are any of these guys going to be better than Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, Shohei Ohtani, Dylan Cease, Carlos Rodon, Shane Bieber, or Shane McClanahan?
I mean, if every single thing clicks for Castillo, I guess there's an outside shot. But obviously, first answer is probably not.
Right. So that's how I think about it. When Robbie Ray won his Cy Young, it was a very down year for those, headline guys. I mean, Shohei wasn't in the Cy Young conversation. It was essentially him and Garrett Cole. And Ray had the edge on him in the final month of the season, and that really pushed it over the edge. It would take a Robbie Ray performance kind of like that in his 2021 season to even sniff it. But I don't even know if, say, Robbie Ray puts up that exact season he had in 2021 this year in 2023. I don't think that wins the Cy Young over a Garrett Cole. I don't think it would win it over a Shohei. I don't think it would, if DeGrom's healthy, I don't think it would win it over Jacob deGrom. I mean, Dylan Cease this year arguably had a better season than Robbie Ray did in 21. So there's a lot of factors there, and it's not because the Mariners pitchers aren't good enough. I just think the American League has some very, very, very good pitchers.
That's about right. The one I was looking at, you said it, George Kirby at plus 5,000 odds. I mean, we talked to Jason Churchill, which that interview is going to air this upcoming Wednesday. And we talked about George Kirby for a bit, and he was calling him modern day Greg Maddux if everything clicks. I mean, Greg Maddux is one of the best pitchers of all time. And I'm not saying that's going to click in year 2 for Kirby. I'm not saying it's not either. So if it does, plus 5,000 odds for a guy that throws 100 miles an hour, doesn't walk anybody, and has like 6 to 7 pitches, feels like a decent bet, especially for like $5.
Yeah, if you have $5 and you're a true degenerate, then go ahead. So I think that does it for our DraftKings projections. I was hoping there was some more, Lyle, but there's really, the DraftKings only does so much. They highlight a couple guys from each team usually in all of these rankings. So now we have to go on to our projections and see what FanGraphs and the ZIPs projections thinks of the Mariners in 2023. There's a lot of really interesting things here, Lyle. Let's start off with the wins above replacement leaders. Should we? Yeah, we'll start off with that. I mean, they have Julio 5.5 wins this year. The thing that stuck out to me the most in wins above replacement, they think J.P. Crawford's going to be the third most valuable position player on the team and have over 3 wins above replacement this year.
So they're banking on his defense going back up, and they're banking on Colton Wong's defense going back up too, because Wong is 5th at 2.7. So look, you can rack up a lot of WAR defensively, and if those guys are going to do it with the glove, they'll do it with the glove. But yeah, like Teoscar doesn't play great defense, right? Which is why his projected WAR is a little bit lower. The one that stood out to me is Cal at 3 wins. I mean, he put up 4 last year, only hit like 210. He's going to get some help from the shift going away. He feels like he should be higher than that. That's the one of those 5 that stood out to me was Cal Raleigh at 3 wins. I bet you he goes over.
it just seems like they're not as high in his power this year. As you can see, if there's anything you want to take over in ZIPs, we'll get to Eugenio Suarez here in a second, but they project Cal Raleigh for 22 home runs this season. I mean, he struck out nearly 30% of the time last year and essentially stunk until June, and still managed to hit, still managed to lead the Mariners in home runs last year. So I would say there's a pretty good chance Cal Raleigh hits over 22 home runs this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. Or, well, he led catchers, right? He led Mariners catchers. Or, no, sorry, MLB catchers in home runs because Julio hit 28 and Raleigh hit 27.
I was blanking on the number. I'm going to click over to it here in a second.
Yeah, so Raleigh led MLB catchers in home runs last year. And if he hits 22 home runs next year, this year, that's a good year. But yeah, I would probably take the over on that.
Right.
Okay.
They project him. What's the projection? They have him at 117 games this year on Steamer or on Zips. They have him at 117 games and 22 home runs. In 119 games last year, he had 27 with a 29% strikeout rate. See, he cuts down on that strikeout rate 2% and plays just as many games. You're not telling me he's not gonna eclipse 27 home runs?
Yeah, he should. I mean, I guess you can't ever project for sure. Like, you never know. You can't say it definitively this second. But yeah, I would think he goes over 22 home runs. And again, he was still like one of the team leaders last year between Julio hitting 28 and Suarez hitting 31. Like, those guys all have real power. And there's a chance Raleigh could lead the club in home runs this year. So yeah, if it was up to me, I'm going over on his home runs. He plays good defense. I'm going over on the 3 wins. But next category here, WRC plus leaders for the Mariners. Okay, we'll start to rip through some of these categories here a little bit more quickly. Julio is projected to lead the Mariners at 137. Ty France is 128. Teoscar's 123. Dylan Moore's 113. Colton Wong 110. Are there any of those that stood out particularly in your eyes?
They're pretty high on Colton Wong, to be honest. I mean, so they have him, if we're taking a look at the leaderboards, they have Colton Wong up near the top in WRC plus and wins above replacement, right? I don't even know if we highlighted him really in that top 5. They have him top 5 on the M's this year, this upcoming season, wins above replacement and WRC plus. That's a good thing for the Mariners. If he actually plays up to his projections by Zips, then I think Mariners fans will be very happy, especially with this injury to Dylan Moore. Then he'll miss time when opening day rolls around next week.
3 of the last 4 years, Colton Wong has put up a WRC plus of 109 or better. I know he doesn't have a ton of home run power, but he does produce offensively. So I guess I wouldn't be shocked if he was 5th or 6th on the team and weighted runs created plus. I guess the one that stood out in my mind, or not stood out, but just looking at Ty France, so 128, right, which is right about where he's been each of the last 2 years. And it's just so hard for me to predict which Ty France we're going to get. And maybe it's the Ty France that puts up around a 125 to 130 WRC plus again. But I just wonder, could we see a full season of Ty France of what we got from the first half of 2022? Or are we going to see more of Ty France in terms of what we got in the second half of 2022, where he was really out of his approach and missing a lot of pitches? So I don't really know where that's going to land.
Mm-hmm. I think that's more of a safe guess from FanGraphs. I mean, they're guessing that it's probably going to be a similar trajectory for him. But don't be fooled. I mean, there's upside in Ty France's bat this year to go like 140 in that category, which would be incredible for the Mariners if they could get a 140 out of him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that would be the difference maker in the world. I mean, if he's second on the team behind Julio and there's 2 guys with 140 WRC pluses or better, and then Teoscar's not far behind or Cal's not far behind. Again, this lineup could get deeper this year, and we've talked about it a lot over the course of the offseason. So stolen bases isn't a category where the M's have exactly thrived, especially last season. Their projections are a little low, which is to be expected. Julio's projected 27, Dylan Moore 20, Sam Haggerty 19, Colton Wong 14. I guess same thing here. What are you looking at among the M's guys in terms of stolen bases?
Well, I don't know if Dylan Moore's getting 20 now that he's going to miss time. And it's so hard to look at to really judge this because there's one full-time player on this list in top 5. It's Julio, and he's going to lead it, right? So this is kind of like a, oh, well, duh list when you really think about it.
I guess I'll kind of answer a question with a question, because Julio was the one that stood out to me the most on this list, just in terms of how much are they going to let him steal? Are they going to kind of reel it back this year to try to avoid injuries and not let him slide headfirst a bunch? And maybe we see him steal 15 bases.
I would say probably 20 bases is a good mark for Julio. I mean, he has the speed to steal 40 if he wants, but I would set the base at like 20. That's what I pretty confidently say. It's not like they're not going to let him steal, but they are going to be able just a little more cautious.
That's probably right. Okay, pitcher war, next category. Luis Castillo's has the highest projection, 3.5. George Kirby's at 2.5. Logan Gilbert's at 2.3. Robbie Ray at 1.6. Bryce Miller at 1.5. Those are your top 5 Mariners pitcher war projections.
DraftKings a little bit higher on Robbie Ray than FanGraphs is. So, I'd be kind of disappointed if Robbie Ray came out and had a 1.6 wins above replacement this year, especially for how good he's looked in spring and how we think he's really set in and become comfortable with the Mariners. Otherwise, I mean, this is probably right in the ballpark. You really, to be a high war pitcher, I mean, you really, really need to be good. So they kind of just have middling predictions for George Kirby and Logan Gilbert. I can't too confidently say Gilbert will jump that mark. And again, on Kirby's innings, the FanGraphs is pretty low on Kirby's innings, so it's that one you can just shrug at. But Bryce Miller at 1.5, I mean, they think he'll be at least an above replacement level pitcher when he comes into the majors. Depending on how much he pitches in the bigs, that is yet to be seen. Zips projects him. I don't have pitchers pulled up. I have hitters. We'll click the pitchers button. And Bryce Miller they have him, I think, a little bit over 100 innings this year, but I'll get you that actual number here in a second when it loads.
Okay, while you're looking that up. While you're looking that up.
119 innings. 119 for Bryce. And so
it's just a matter of where he gets the innings, because there's a chance he just comes up this year and pitches out of the bullpen. The way he gets those innings and accrues that type of war is either if there's an injury or if the Mariners get sick of Marco Gonzalez, which, I mean, either are possible, and Bryce Miller may find his way into the rotation at some point this year. Also, if he found his way into the rotation and accrued a 1.5 war as a rookie, that'd mean he had a really good rookie year. So that one jumped off the page to me. I guess I have my questions about where that war stems from. But, hey, don't let me hold him back. If he's going to be another Mariners arm that comes up and dominates this year for the third year in a row, between having a Logan Gilbert in 21, a George Kirby in 22, and Bryce Miller in 23, look, sign me right up. Okay,
okay. I'll say just one last note here on Bryce Miller. So they have him tabbed for like a 3.83 ERA, 119 innings. They don't have this. I will say the FanGraphs outlook is just a slightly bit clunky. I wish there were more numbers here on one tab. So they have Bryce Miller at 113 strikeouts in 119 innings. I would say if he comes up, it'll probably be a little higher than that.
Strikeout totals. Robbie Ray leads it at 195. Castillo projected 177. Gilbert 164. Kirby 132. Is there anything? I mean, we're kind of rolling through these now, and we've talked about a lot of these guys in depth already. I mean, is it safe to say Robbie should be the team leader in strikeouts?
Yeah, I mean, that looks right. I mean, you can correlate it out to innings projections, as we've said, but overall, I mean, that looks right. I would bump Kirby up maybe a little bit, but again, that's just tied to his innings.
Let's just tie in innings here to this segment too, because we're talking about projected strikeouts. The projected innings is it has Logan Gilbert leading at just under 175, Castillo just under 172, Robbie Ray just under 168, Marco 155 and 2/3, and Kirby 136 and 2/3. Yeah, so to that ratio, Ray doesn't throw the most innings, but 167 innings probably still means about 25 to 28 starts. And it, like you said earlier, if he makes that many starts, he should strike out 205 or more guys.
They have Robbie Ray tagged for 29 starts this year. So, I mean, right, that's right in the ballpark. But they haven't given up 29 home runs. So that's probably where the wins above replacement gets a little dropped.
Well, that is kind of his hamstring. He strikes a lot of guys out, but sometimes he gives up hard contact. And we'll see if that comes down at all this year. ERA, now this is including everybody, starters and relievers. Andres Munoz is projected to lead the team at 280. Luis Castillo at 299. Diego Castillo at 349. Kirby at 356. Brash at 363. Gilbert at 366. So this might give us a chance to talk about a couple of the reliever projections here.
Diego Castillo, very, very interesting. We said we were still a little bit skeptical of Diego in our reliever preview, but FanGraphs taps him to having a pretty decent reliever season. I don't know, a 3.5 ERA for a reliever is, it's okay. But in terms of these projections, I mean, he's top 3 on the M's, so that's a good thing for Diego Castillo. And then Matt Brash, that's again probably where he'll be at if his fastball gets hit around a little bit. I would say from hearing from Chris Langan about his fastball is really just kind of flat, and if he leaves it over the plate a few too many times, that could lead to some home runs, and then that ERA would be sitting at about 3.6. I mean, really good relievers are anywhere from 2.5 to 1, right? So go off of that metric.
Where Diego Castillo's FIP and xERA sit, I don't know at the end of 2023, but I mean, it's sure possible he could have a 3.4 to 3.5 ERA. That's where he's been the last couple of seasons. I mean, I'm going to be honest, Brash might not have the best fastball in terms of run value, but I'm sorry, projected 3.63 ERA, I'm going under that. I mean, he put up like a 2.35 as a reliever last year, and he was throwing fastballs out of the bullpen. Didn't seem to affect him that much. Yeah, I'm going under.
All right. And then Munoz leading, I mean, that doesn't really surprise me. He is unbelievable. I think it'll be closer to 2 than it'll be to 2.8. I think I'm pretty confident in that for Munoz.
I would agree. Okay, the last category we have to get to here, and it's a little bit broader in terms of Mariners season projections. Player standouts. Okay, there's a couple guys on here that we tabbed. Gino, Teoscar, Kelnick, Tom Murphy. I don't know if there's one guy you want to talk about specifically or not.
I don't like how low they are on Gino. I'm not sure what about Gino's season last year gave them a sense that he is going to regress mightily and jump from a 130 WRC plus that he put up last year to a 108 this year. I mean, they really must think his strikeout rate is going to stay above 30%. I think Gino could bring it down a little bit for this year, maybe not over 30. So, I mean, that's where my optimism comes from. But they have FanGraphs says Eugenio Suarez at 209, 302, 413, 28 home runs, 2.5 wins above replacement, which if you just look at those 3 numbers on the end, 108 WRC plus, 28 home runs, 2.5 wins above replacement. Yeah, okay. But I don't think Gino Suarez is only going to have an on-base percentage of 302. I think that's that's a little bit low.
And a 108 WRC plus, again, if these were betting odds, give me the over. Guy had the second highest WRC plus on the team last year. I don't expect it to drop that much, especially considering toward the end of the year, his strikeout rate did drop. I mean, he started leaving a lot more pitches off the plate, and his strikeout rate went down. So there's a world it could go down to the 25% area in 2023. I guess.
Go ahead. I'll say, how about Teoscar Hernandez, Lyle? I mean, they have him as that's a pretty good season, I would say. I mean, again, I always like the on-base percentage to be a little bit higher, which I think they might be a little bit low on his slash line in terms of what the Mariners expect. And especially this being a contract year for him as the premier bat in the next year's free agent class. I think he has his expectations set a little higher than his projected 253, 308, 462, 123 WRC plus, 29 home runs, and 2.5 wins above replacement.
It is crazy with Machado signing the extension that after Ohtani, Teoscar really might be the top player on the market next year. I mean, in terms of position players, it's a weak class after Ohtani. Yeah, the thing about Teoscar is he doesn't walk a whole lot, so it's hard for him to ever have a really high on-base percentage. I'm with you that I think it should be higher than about 308. I would also think his WRC plus in total can be higher than 123, although that might correlate with a higher on-base percentage. I would, again, this is another one where, I mean, if he puts up a 123 WRC plus, that's like that's a good year. But I think FanGraphs in general seems to go a little low on their projections. That's what I've always noticed about looking at Zips projections. They aim low. So I wouldn't be shocked if he outperforms it.
Right, a little bit more on the safer side. They're not out here to make a bold prediction. They're here to set probably the median of what a good season looks, or what a season would look like for him. Which, fine, right? A median season, I would say, for Teoscar Hernandez would probably be 123.
And the last guy on here as we wrap this up, Jared Kelenic, they project him to put up a slash line of 223, 290, 443, a 105 WRC plus, 22 home runs, 1.4 F WAR, and a 25.4% strikeout rate. Look, again, FanGraphs errs on the side of caution. And to be honest, if this is what Kelenic does this next year, that is an above average season and a real big league player. I do think he can be better than that, especially the way he's looked this spring. I don't know why FanGraphs doesn't love his defense, but he is a good defender. So, this is another guy where, again, like you'll take that season to the bank just like you would with the projected year for Teoscar. But again, I think he can do better.
They have him behind Teoscar Hernandez and AJ Pollock in terms of defensive projection. Just like it's really hard to project defense at the beginning of the year, but if that's what we're looking at, like that's really where he's at. They project him to have the same wins above replacement as Mason McCoy and behind Colton Wong's brother, believe it or not, which I think they kind of just act as if everyone was playing on the big league roster for an entire season and then average it out, which, okay, that's fine. I think the biggest part was the strikeout rate, 25.4%, which would be a revelation. That's probably the biggest number. If that number actually gets hit, then I think the Mariners have really done their job in helping Jared Kelenic along, and I think he's done a good job of really limiting his weakness. And again, if he ends up slugging over 400 this year and knocking 22 home runs, I don't really think, if he does that and puts up plus defense, I really don't think there would be much of a complaint.
If he puts up plus defense, which again, I think he will, considering he was really good in the outfield last year when he was playing the corners, he's just not a center fielder. Like his rookie year, he was playing center field and it was kind of a tough go for him. But in the corners, he really profiles well. So like you said, if that's his offensive profile and the good defense, he's probably closer to 3 wins than he is to a win and a half. So sign me right up for that slash line if that's what he puts up. Although again, he could do better than that. So it'll be pretty fun to see. But is there anything else you kind of want to touch on here? Because I think we've covered just about all the projections.
Yeah, I'm trying to comb and see if there's anyone that I think we might be a little too high on, or FanGraphs might be, but I don't think so. I mean, they have Tom Murphy. I mean, we could touch on this last line. Tom Murphy playing 78 games this year, which would be really good for the Mariners if they can get Tom Murphy in there and put up 1.8 wins above replacement. That would be a godsend. I mean, I'm not saying I'm down on Tom Murphy, but for a guy who we haven't seen play in a considerable chunk of time in quite a while, they like his offense and his defense. Despite striking out 31% of the time, they still project him 10 homers and about 270 at bats. That's pretty good. The walk rate of about 11%.
If he's on the field, he's a perfect second catcher, especially because he crushes lefties, which is the theme of a lot of Mariners guys this year. I mean, Murphy's going to hit lefties. Teoscar will hit lefties. Dylan Moore will hit lefties. AJ Pollock will hit lefties. But the question for him is, can he stay on the field? That's the key. If he's on the field, I think he's a perfectly fine second catcher who you can throw in at DH sometimes. And if that's the line he puts up, again, if he plays half the year and puts up that projected profile, again, that's totally fine with me.
It's just so funny with these projections. I mean, they project it all as if they spend all year on the major league roster. Like Zach DeLoach is projected to have 3/10 of a win above replacement this year for the Mariners in how many games? 109. So yeah, it's just kind of weird to look at. That's why when ranking it, it's like who's ranked. It's like, so when like Colton Wong's brother is ranked ahead of Jared Kelenic, it's like, oh. It's like, we'll put a grain of salt with this.
Yeah. Look, you and I got to see Zach DeLoach win a Cape Cod League batting title live back in 2019. But is he going to be on the M's roster at some point this year? I'm not so sure.
I don't know. I ever saw Zach DeLoach get a hit. I don't remember. I think our team played him once. So
Oh,
I don't remember if he really did anything in that game, to be honest.
oh, he absolutely destroyed us when we'd play him. Like, he hit a ball in one of our games, which was at our home park in Hyannis. It was like one of the farthest hit balls I saw in the league in my 2 seasons there. Then again, the team I was calling games for was like historically one of the worst teams in the history of the league, and Deloach was just absolutely teeing off on him. But yeah, look, I'd love to see him do that with a wood bat in Seattle instead of in Hyannis, but I'm just not so sure we'll see it in 2023 or not. But look, this has been a fun show going through some of these projections. We're doing it because, we thought it'd be a good show to do to kind of divvy up where some of the odds are before the start of the season and kind of show where people are looking at the Mariners. But you guys have heard it here first. TJ thinks 91 wins. I said 93 wins. Now, where's the actual total going to be? That's what we're going to have to wait and find out here. But I think that'll just about wrap up this bonus episode and this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. Thanks as always for sticking with us, and thanks for sticking with us for some extra time this week because we thought it'd be a good episode to get in. You guys know the drill by now. You want to listen to the full podcast? It's on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. On social media, we're on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. I am really looking forward to the start of the season. We are almost there. We've got a bunch of fun content coming out for when the season starts. We're going to do a lot more video content. We're going to try to be out in the community. We might have some food reviews coming from the ballpark and maybe some other places as well. We might talk to some fans and do some interviews throughout the year. Go follow our social media accounts because I think we're going to do some pretty cool stuff when the season starts, and we'd love to have you guys along for the ride. So for TJ Mathewson, this is Lyle Goldstein. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.